Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to talk about being a better dungeon master and bringing the best narrative possible for our players, for dungeon performers, for people who play Dungeons and Dragons player characters at the Dungeons and Dragons table, as dungeon masters. And we're going to do that by looking at the final decade of cinema archetypes as defined by the groundbreaking movie reviewer Patrick Willem. And we're going to look at the 2020s. We're going to look at what Patrick Willem has to say about the 2020s in film and the stories that are being told there, and then pack up the lessons for us as dungeon masters. All right. So what types of films are being made in the 2020s? Now, first of all, I've done a breakdown of every single archetype that Patrick Willem defined for film. In the 1970s, we were looking at the dark auteurs, okay? In the 1980s, we were looking at high concept. In the 1990s, films were about regular people, okay? In the 2000s and the 2010s, films were about flashy, prestigious packaging of famous intellectual properties, right? And now in the 2020s, how does Patrick Williams archetype this? Well, he hasn't archetyped this, right? Not technically, but he has functionally. He did an entire show on the death of cinema, right? That cinema is dying, right? But then he also acknowledged, there's still literally people going to the movies right now, and movies are coming out every single week, and there are thousands of movie theaters across the state. So, like, and also he also showed somebody saying the death of cinema literally in the 1950s, right? So the death of cinema has been reported for a long time and never seems to arrive, right? So, but he talked about the death of cinema. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to box up his content into a nice package. The way, so these aren't his words, but I believe this is what he has presented, right? In a much longer way, in a very good video you should watch. And I don't recommend any Patrick Willem videos. I recommend them all. There are, like, his content is pure genius, right? Okay, so what does Patrick Williams' encapsulation of the 2020s, in my humble opinion, what does it boil down to, right? He has a longer, more wordy, version of this, but I'm gonna break it down into 3 words, the way he's done for everything else, or a very snappy, like, archetype, right? And that is crisis cinema. That's where we are right now. The 2020s are crisis cinema. And there are 3 movies that actually perfectly capture this. The first is James Cameron's Avatar 2. It made $2.2 billion, right? But it made it in the Great Pandemic, right? So we are post the Great Pandemic. Actually, I don't even know if we're not post Great Pandemic. I had a massive impact from the pandemic this year, right? Like, where I didn't get what people got during the Great Pandemic, but, like, it is still impacting our lives very much, right? And so right now, all the movies that are being made are simply a huge question. Every single movie has nothing to do with art and everything to do with commerce. Right now in the 2020s, every single movie is a shouting question mark to the sky saying, will movies survive, right? Crisis cinema. Are we allowed to survive, right? And so first of all, the biggest American film in history is Avengers Endgame. It made $2.9 billion. It set the quality standard for commercial performance, right? And every movie in the world that isn't some art house, throwaway, is trying to beat that number, right? That's what every single movie studio wants. They want to beat the $2.9 billion quality commerce mark set by Avengers Endgame, right? And after the pandemic, nobody knew, right? Literally, films were making 10% to 33% of what they could have made if the Great Pandemic had not happened, right? So that was really powerful. Like, and people are like, they were talking about the death of movies when movies were making $2.9 billion, right? Now movies can barely put up $29 million. And like, here's a perfect example. The Marvels did not even make 100 million domestic. That is astounding. That is astounding for there to be a Marvels film that couldn't even make 100 million domestic. That is shocking, right? So what you're looking at there is crisis cinema, right? The other two are Barbenheimer, right? Barbie made $1.4 billion and was the biggest movie of 2023. Oppenheimer made $0.9 billion as a history film, and that is the best performing historical film in the history of cinema. Nothing has beat it, right? So that's astounding. But what's even weirder is both movies, most people believe, made 25 to 33% more because the communities came along and said, we're going to celebrate Barbenheimer. And we're going to go see both of these movies on the same day. And I did this. I was part of Barbenheimer. I even saw it in the right order. I saw Barbie first and Oppenheimer. I saw Barbie at 11 a.m. and I saw Oppenheimer at 4 p.m. on the same day. And I saw people cosplaying for both films, right? It was an event. Truly an astounding, incredible, unprecedented event. Truly incredible. Like nothing I've ever seen, right? But this is crisis cinema. There's a question mark of, can film survive, right? Now, what do we learn as dungeon masters from that? Crisis campaigning. We are in it right now. Every single dungeon master is right now participating in crisis campaigning. Can Dungeons and Dragons survive, right? And I don't even need to explain this to you. I'm going to make this very brief because you saw it. 2023 was a crisis. 2023 had a crisis every single month for Dungeons & Dragons, and it started with the biggest crisis in January. In 1983, evangelical Christians said, you are not allowed to buy, sell, own, read, write, do Dungeons & Dragons. Right? In 2023, OSR and indie zealots came and said, you are not allowed to buy, read, own, write, do Dungeons & Dragons. They burned physical books in 1983. They burned digital books in 2023. And in 2023, we are in, and then going into 2024, we are in crisis campaigning. Are we even allowed to do Dungeons & Dragons? And the OSR says no, and the indie says no. And there's nobody talking about fun anymore. It is virtual daggers out, battling to find a D&D killer, because that's what the OSR and the indies want. So Patrick Willem defines crisis cinema. I define crisis campaigning. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.